when I was 18 years old. I found myself suddenly home from college with a major depressive episode, and I was stuck in catatonia. You know what catatonia is? You know, if you undergo general surgery and you're just emerging from it and you first become aware of yourself again, but you're not able to speak or really interact with your world. I was stuck in that for a few weeks. It came out of nowhere. I was in a lockdown hospital ward. When I got home, the stigma, I wish the stigma went away. The catatonia went away. And my parents and I went to our family doctor once a week. And I would go into one of the examination rooms for about 5 minutes. How are you feeling, Owen? Fine. Well, you look good. Just take these pills, rest for a few months, and you'll be fine. Then I went back to the waiting room, and my parents went into the doctor's office and met with him for about a half hour. I sat there in the waiting room, bewildered. I felt so broken, so confused, so ashamed of myself. The doctor said it was just a temporary chemical imbalance. But since they were in a meeting and talking about me, I figured that I had some very serious defect with my brain that was so awful and so scary that they couldn't really even tell me what it was. And in my family, you didn't ask questions. Sundays would come, and our family went to church. We always went to church. I loved going to church. Even when we were out of town on vacation, we'd go to church. But my father said, Owen, you stay home. People might ask questions about why you're home from college. When neighbors and friends came to our home, I was told to go in the other room. Now, my dad loved me. I don't think he was being mean. I think he really understood Stigma. So after 2 or 3 months, I was declared fixed and sent back to college and on with my life as if nothing had ever happened. And fortunately, to this day, the catatonia has never returned. 2 or 3 years later, I was driving along one day, and I remember where I was. I was on Foothill Drive at the University of Utah. And there was some news program on, and they were talking about, I have it off, by the way, is that, oh, okay, well, ignore that. Someone talked about Thomas Eagleton. You know who he was? He was a candidate for vice president of the United States. And he was the vice presidential candidate with one of the leading contenders. But it became public that he even had issues with depression in his past. And when this made public, it was a national scandal. And he was quickly taken off the ballot, or quickly taken off, and the presidential candidate picked another running mate. And I thought to myself, well, if I ever wanted to run for office, I probably would. They find out the secret about me, and I was determined that no one would ever know about this deep, dark secret that I had. About 15 years later, my dear wife, Becky, sat me down one day and said, Owen, you need to get counseling. What?
Speak up.
Speak up?
AC's loud.
The air conditioning's on, I'll speak up. You know, if you can't hear me back there, would you please raise your hand and just remind me? Will you do that? Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Owen.
Counseling, psychotherapy was wonderful, and I learned that I had chronic clinical depression and anxiety. And my life totally changed through that. I went from experiencing life in monochrome to color, and it felt so good. And when I come to that point, I recognized that I had neighbors, friends, and others who appeared to me were unknowingly stuck like I was for many years. And this made me feel really bad, and I wanted to do something about it. And if you know this feeling, it's why you're here, it's why you're peer support specialists. And so I thought, I'm going to write a book of my story. About writing a book. And so I wrote a book. And I had this whole scheme laid out where I was going to have an attorney friend who lived in California get it published and market it and everything because it wouldn't have my name on it. Then I finally got the courage to share it with a few close family members and friends. And they thought it was pretty good. I shared it with a couple of very accomplished authors. One was a book critic for one of the major newspapers here. And these two people said, Owen, it reads well, it's interesting, but without your name on it, it will go nowhere. You need to put your name on this book. What do I do? What would everybody think? And what about my career? I was a CPA. I was in corporate finance management. If the whole world knew that I struggled with mental illness, would I be able to provide for my family? I stewed about this for weeks. Ultimately, the book got published with my name on it. And I suffered the consequences. Some bad, but most of them very good. I also decided to start speaking about mental health conditions. I mean, if I was going to open myself up to the world, I opened myself up to the world. And the last few years, I've been speaking about stigma and about eradicating stigma within ourselves. In some of these speeches, I dreamed together with the audience. I said, some rich person needs to step up and do in Utah for what John Huntsman Sr. did for cancer. You know, he was the richest man in Utah for many years, and he started the Huntsman Cancer Institute, and he's since passed. And I thought that nobody will ever do that. Nobody's going to put their name on mental illness and mental health. And then October 2019, November 2019, do you remember what happened? The Huntsman family, his children, announced that they were contributing hundreds of millions of dollars to the University of Utah and creating the Huntsman Mental Health Institute. When I heard this news, I was floored. I was stunned. I was also overwhelmed with happiness. Then this last October, I read a news article online, and it said that there was a summit the next week being held up in the mountains at Snowbird, and it was called Stop Stigma Together. Stop Stigma Together. I had to be at this place, but I wasn't invited. So do you know what I did? I went anyway. And I had a tough time finding the conference room. There were a lot of them. Building the building. And then finally I went up to the greeting desk where they were passing out names and checking people in. And I was fully expecting to be turned away, but I wasn't. They said, come on in. And I've been involved with Stop Stigma Together since, which brings us to our topic today. So, the Stop Stigma Together, what it is it's a nationwide effort to basically combine the efforts of a number of different organizations that are already, here we go. Hey, we are going. Can you all see if I stand over here?
Yes.
It just reminds me, have you heard that joke where there was once a minister preaching to his congregation and all the lights went out, and was very concerned and hard for a few minutes, and he finally said, please everyone stand and raise your hands. And they all stood and raised their hands, and the light came back on, and he said, many hands make light work. That was sure done. It's led by the Huntsman Mental Health Institute. It's to significantly reduce stigma related to mental health conditions and substance use disorders, and to combine the resources of many organizations. And many already have programs to reduce stigma. Here's just a few of the organizations that are on the steering committee and that are sponsoring it. I'd just like to point out a couple. One is the Ad Council. You familiar with the Ad Council? Smokey the Bear, Don't Let a Friend Drive, those things. They're a not-for-profit, and they basically develop messaging and advertising to some of our nation's biggest challenges. And so the Huntsman Mental Health Institute is working with them to create a national campaign. So who knows? What is it going to be? Not Smokey the Bear or something else. Not Mr. McGruff. Yeah. Another is SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management. And I just point this out because it's not just mental health related organizations, it's others too, which I think is really exciting. You can't quite, there's a map of the country behind there somewhere, but it's just people from organizations from all over the country. Now, just a few people. The man at our left is Mark Rappaport. He's a psychiatrist that heads, he's CEO of the Huntsman Mental Health Institute. He was hired just a year or two ago. Next to him is David Huntsman. He is like chairman of the Huntsman Foundation. And next to him is his sister, Christina Huntsman Durham. And she's very involved. And I don't know who the last two people are. But I just have to tell you that I have spoken one-on-one with these people, and I was a little wary just Owen talking to these people that inherited hundreds of millions of dollars and had a famous psychiatrist and everything. I have found them to be very down-to-earth, humble, good people that really want to make a difference in the world. And that has been so cool. So I'm sorry, even though they're all older, white males, heterosexual as far as I know, I guess these are the ones that are going to pass. have the money. If you could do, anyone want to help me with that? The spring of 2022, this thing really got launched when all of the partners met at the Grand America Hotel here and just got things going. And then the Design Summit last fall at Stoneberg, that's the one that I broke into. Over 200 individuals there, 130 organizations, and it was the launch of the national network. The I'm the Prize, of course, is doing something about stigma. Now, the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine did a study, and this was a statement from it in their 2016 report. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later. They said they did a major in-depth study and survey about stigma. They said there was a need for a coordinated and sustained effort for over 2 or more decades to reduce the stigma associated with mental health and substance use disorders. We know that mental health, substance use disorders is complicated, and we can't solve all the problems at once, as just every one of us would like to. So the focus is just on eliminating stigma. And why? Because stigma does a lot of things, including preventive care, but also it's changeable. It's not like the law of gravity that we can't do anything about. Stigma is changeable. How is it organized? Huntsman Mental Health Institute is the backbone. Then there's the steering committee of all of, like the, I'm most familiar with NAMI because I've volunteered for them for years, but like their CEO is on the steering committee. And then there are all these different working groups have been formed in different areas, finance strategies, communications. The Ad Council was part of the communications summits. And then there are over 200 organizations and a lot of people like me in different organizations, and hopefully like some of you that will want to get involved. So there's state level initiatives starting with Utah. Utah's going to be the prototype, and there's collaboration between the national and state initiatives. The structure, there's the Utah leadership team. Do you know Evan Dome? He's on the state leadership team. Yes, go to Sarah. And there are different working groups, a lot of different working groups, a lot of help needed on these working groups, and I'm on one of those. In fact, I chair one of them. Okay, what is stigma? We all know what stigma is. This is so much preaching to the choir. Oh my goodness. It's a mark that reduces an individual from a whole and usual person to a tainted, discounted one. Do you like that definition? Does that fit your understandings?
Yes. Yeah. Less than human.
Less than human. A discrediting social evaluation that devalues an individual or group. So it's a social evaluation. Ooh, the circles are a little off here. Discrediting, and it devalues an individual or group. Okay, Brent started to talk a little bit about this. He was introduced. You all know Brent Kelsey from the state. He's such a good guy. So there's structural, the 3 different things. There's structural, that's in our laws, in housing employment restrictions. You run into these? They're awful. Policies everywhere. That's structural. Then there's public stigma, which is what we all think about the most. about this ickiness and cultural perceptions, the stereotypes, isolation, then there's self-stigma. If we drink the water, if we drink the public stigma and the structural stigma, how I view me. This self-stigma, can it be changed?
Yes.
Each one of us, right? Do any of you think that it's possible to totally rid yourself of stigma? Every last wrong. That's a question that I lay out there. My wife, my dear wife, sometimes thinks that I still have a little stigma because I'm so open about it. Sometimes I embarrass her. She is so patient and kind. So, the Stop Stigma Together effort is targeting all three. It can be fixed and changed because it's just all about thoughts, words, and actions. Now, this is the real academic stuff. I don't know if I can even pronounce all these words. This was created, this slide was created by University of Utah professor, and this is pretty heavy stuff. Ask me about debits and credits. Concealability, how we can hide it, how well it can be controlled, how central it is to our core, disruptiveness, malleability. Hence, even within mental health and substance disorder, degrees of stigma varies considerably. You agree with that?
Yes.
Are there antidotes, normalizations? We can just talk about it. Someday, Becky Hope can embarrass us. We'll talk about it. Helping people see how it affects education, protest, advocacy. If there was a protest against stigma at Utah State Capitol, would we all go, yes, yes! Increase social contact, peer programs, media campaigns. The media folks say there are two types of media campaigns. There's the hair game, the big national ones, the Smokey the Bear stuff. Am I dating myself? Everybody knows this. And then the ground game is customized messages. Why it is important to eliminate it? Duh. This was very impressive to me. Former U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams said this. I'm often asked what I think the biggest killer is out there, whether it's cigarettes or obesity or fentanyl. I feel the biggest killer out there is actually stigma.
Nice.
Do you believe that?
Yeah.
Don't you think it's cool that someone like him said it? Yeah, share his own story. How stigma has affected his brother. We know that there's a stigma attached to acknowledging that you have mental health issues. If we looked at it as a disease, perhaps my brother would have been given help sooner before his addiction worsened and before he got involved in the criminal justice system. It's a painful story to tell. I do it because if addiction can happen to the family of the Surgeon General of the United States, it can happen to anyone. You know this. Stigma prevents family, friends, co-workers from talking about it. Policymakers from crafting laws free up the and companies from taking actions. Students, you know one of the reasons for a shortage in mental health workers, hopefully not peer support specialists, because of stigma? Right? People who seeking help, proper funding for the mental health system, you know, the one thing that isn't on here is that stigma For those of us that are around, we feel like it's in recovery and everything. It's still an awful feeling to feel stigma, to feel the shame and everything. It's awful. It's no fun. The words we use to describe mental illness and substance use disorders indicate the likelihood that people will seek help and recover. And it contributes in many ways to poor health outcomes and consequences. Right? So, NAMI just said that, okay, this is something I relate to, maybe the account I am. $300 billion a year it costs the country in lost productivity. Now I can't get my brain around $300 billion. It's a lot of money. So it impacts our country. What research is being done? Some previous research. I'm just going to go through this really fast. There have been studies on stigma. The first one was in 1950, before I was born, believe it or not. And the latest was in 2016. Some congressionally mandated, performed by that group. They're a non-profit funded by the government and other entities. And they do studies on national critical issues. So they found that between those 2 years, public knowledge about mental illness and STDs had increased significantly. That was good. But beliefs shifted from the idea of illness in the direction of blame. Isn't that sad? It's been going in the wrong directions. And also perceptions about the dangerousness of us people have worsened. That's sad. Yes, please.
I just have to point this out.
Yes.
That they're using the term mental illness, which is not a favorable,
Right.
and we like to call it that because of stigma, so there's stigma.
Yes. I like to always refer to it as mental health conditions. How do you like to refer to it?
Mental health challenges, so
Okay.
maybe we give that feedback
Yes.
to stigma people. Yep.
Thank you. That's good. Thank you.
Excuse me.
And I'm just quoting these reports. So sorry if I'm not using good language.
Can you repeat just maybe briefly what she said? I couldn't hear back here. That's okay.
She said that it's too bad that we're referring to it as mental illness because it has negative connotations, and we prefer calling it mental health conditions or mental health challenges. Right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just the narrative.
Yes.
Totally.
Shift
It's
the
less
narrative.
stigmatizing.
Yeah. Thank you.
But it shows where we're at, too.
Yeah.
Helps to like understand on the real bridge.
Yeah. Okay. Go through these fast. Schizophrenia and STDs are more highly stigmatized than others. You know that. 50% of adults said that the treatment of their children resulted in discrimination and long-term negative effects. I have talked to a mother who said that she would never allow any of her children, and I believe she had 8 of them, to get treatment because it would hurt them throughout their lives. And I knew this family, and some of their children had very big challenges. It's so sad. 61% would discourage a family member from marrying a depressed person. I'm so glad that my wife decided to marry me, and we're very happily married. What is it this year? It will be 48 years. Don't ask me to pronounce that word. Found a greater relative risk of violence with people with mental illness, but the risk is actually very, very small. Doesn't that bug you when they have news? You say, well, the shooter to this mass shooting, and he had mental illness.
And diabetes.
And diabetes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Thank you. Well said. I'm going to tell that to the ad council. And then people with STDs antisocial personality disorders have a higher risk of violence. But again, it's very, very small. Peers play an essential role in combating stigma. Yay, let's all stand up and celebrate. Let's stick around. And study that what we do really works. Hooray! Okay, we know all these things. We get poor legal outcomes, housing and employment discrimination, or counsel was sent to job, police were overqualified, they were treated differently, college campus received poor health care. Everybody could stand up, I'm sure, and say, yes, yes. Okay, reasons for not receiving treatment, you all know this. It's too expensive. They can handle it themselves without treatment. They don't know where to find it. Concerns about confidentialities. Neighbors have a negative opinion. Fear of being committed. I was committed to a hospital once. I couldn't leave. I was locked in. That's an awful feeling. That's an awful feeling. Especially, yes, exactly. Go for help and they lock you up. Negative impact on job, treatment won't help. So now the Stop Stigma effort, these are just some of the things that the Stop Stigma effort, they've engaged some really heady people that study this for a living and everything, and so more research is going to be done just on some of the things that they're going to do another big study subsequent to this 2016 one, which was the last one. They're going to do legal mapping in every state about that structural stigma. Won't that be good? So we can start to do something about that. So there are a lot of really cool things that are happening. Just some more things that they're going to be a qualitative project that they're going to be studying by different groups and so forth. What can each of us do to help this effort? Eliminate your own self-stigma.
Right?
Be a role model. You all are. As openly as we can without impacting our career. Everybody doesn't have to be as crazy as me. Discuss it openly. I know, I'm sorry, I shouldn't use that word. I'm not supposed to use that word, am I? Just in our various things, organizations that you're involved with, you can foster that within them. Health insurance parity is so important. Stay informed. Any of you that have a lot of money, you don't know what to do with funds. I don't know, survive the house. How do you know? How do I don't know? Come talk to me after.
You're speaking the wrong demographic.
Yes. So, how can we get more information? There's this website, very easy to remember, stopstigmatogether.org. And this is, and if any of you don't want to copy this down or whatever, just get in touch with me and I'll refer you to this. This is the 2016 study. It's interesting stuff. It's pretty long, but it's pretty interesting. Okay, and there's my email. If any of you want to get in touch with me, I've got a card too if you want. And there's my phone number. Please call me. What? Pictures. Our phone's great.
Yeah. Now the next one.
Okay,
Back to your.
That's right.
Not yet, there.
Ruth, I know you know how to contact me. Photograph on my phone.
I didn't have your personal email. No, I have that now. Yes, I do have some extra.
Okay, now?
Yes.
So is any of this going to make a difference?
Yes.
Yes.
And you can all be up here talking about what I'm going to talk about now. I'm just going to take a few minutes and talk about how getting rid of stigma within myself has helped me. It hasn't all been easy. I've had family members that are very close to me tell me about how they don't like what I'm doing. I had someone very close to me in our home, in our living room, when I was talking to another person about it, condescendingly smirk at me about mental health. And it's a bunch of hooey, and that hurt. I had one of my dear sisters, who I have a very good relationship, tell me that if I proceeded with this, and in my book I had to talk about some of the trauma in my family growing up. They said that it would drag our family's good name through the gutter, and that it would impact my relationship with them if I did that. I had another person who's close to me tell me about one of her best friends. His husband was an attorney, and then he was involved in lawsuits against psychiatrists, and that this whole mental health thing is just so awful and hurts people. The treatments. And I had another person very close to me call me one day, irate, and she never is like this. She was irate because I had suggested that my deceased dad may have lived with depression. She was irate that I could even suggest that our father had depression. I don't know what she was thinking about me, so I'm so open about it. It's been very difficult. But the benefits have far outweighed all of that. You all know this. That's why you're peers. Personally, my relationships are so much better and deeper now, especially with my wife and with my children and our grandchildren, and that's so wonderful. My relationships with my friends are so much better. And I just feel better inside. You know that saying, the truth will make you free? To not have no secrets and just have an open life is so liberating, isn't it? It's so liberating, and that's wonderful. And now I still have bad days. I still have a lot of anxiety. As much as I've worked on it, I'm still trying to do relaxation and mindfulness exercises every day to try to calm down. Last night, I had a hard time going to sleep because I'm tired. And sometimes I get depressed and I have to spend a few days flat in bed and can't do anything. Sometimes I feel awful about myself. But most of the time, it's not like that. Life is very good, and it's very sweet, and it's very wonderful. And if I can just share one more personal thing, I hope you don't mind if I do this. But I feel God's love a lot better than I ever did. Someone once wrote, and read this, the love of God is the most desirable above all things. And I really believe that. And I really feel that. So thank you for all listening to me. And let's stop stigma together!